Hello, my name is Allison Carmen, and welcome to my podcast, 10 Minutes to Less Suffering. And the name of today's podcast is Are You Stressed About the Future? And the idea for this podcast came to me a couple of weeks ago. The audiobook for The Gift of Maybe is being released this week on November 21st. And having the audiobook come out 9 years after the release of The Gift of Maybe is a dream come true. And as I was on the phone with my publicist to prepare for the release of the audiobook, she asked me if I was aware of the fact that the synopsis for the book and my bio included the following statement. Allison Carmen lives in New York City with her husband and 2 children. And it stopped me in my tracks. Because as many of you know, my husband left me about 5 years ago. But when the original book came out in paperback, my husband and I were together at the time. And of course, we changed the language. But it made me think about when I wrote that while I was preparing for the release of the original book. And if someone would have told me, 9 years from today, you will be releasing the audiobook, and you and your husband will no longer be together, and you will have to change that language. First, I wouldn't have believed you. But if I did, if I knew in that moment that that was my future 9 years later, it would have ruined my life. And the reason it would have ruined my life is in that moment, I could not have lived for 9 years knowing that was going to happen. Because it would have stolen every moment. I wouldn't have enjoyed my book release. I wouldn't have enjoyed all our family vacations. Every day, I would have been trying to stop this future from happening, which was probably always going to happen. I would have been stressed all the time. I would have been worried all the time. And my life would have just been about preventing that one event. Sure, maybe I would have loved knowing there was a problem and being able to work on it, but he didn't want to. And the reason I bring this up is that so many of us think we want to know the future in the moment that we're in. And we don't realize that we are only strong enough to be in the moment we're in. And in this moment is where we're most capable. And in this moment is where all the living takes place. And in this moment is where we create. And in this moment is where life is worth living. And because we get so afraid of what the future might bring, we spend our time in the future trying to manage something we can't manage. And we believe if I just knew that my life would work out, if I just knew what was going to happen next, if I just knew how to solve this problem, I'd be happy today. But the truth is, knowing the future in this moment does not give you the peace that you think that it will. And this showed me that because I am so clear that that piece of information would have robbed me of a large part of my life. It would have robbed me of my presence, of my joy. It would have robbed me of the days where my children were still in my home. I was meant to know the moment I was in. I was not meant to know what was to come. And if we could start to see this, if we could start to see that we don't want to know the future. What we want to know is our lives today. What we want to know is who we are. What we want to know is what is in front of us to experience. That's when we become our strongest. That's when we become our most resilient. That's when we experience our most joy. And that's when we really open up to everything. So as I sat there changing that statement to say that Allison lives in New York City and has 2 daughters, instead of Allison is married and lives in New York City with her husband and 2 children, I was okay. I was at peace. I realized that at each point in my life, I've known what I was supposed to know to complete the moment. And it doesn't mean that I'm happy for the pain I had when he left, or I don't sometimes think, wow, if I knew things, could I have worked on it? But I would have been consumed with fear and sacrificed so much for something I probably could have never changed. We're meant to be where we are. And when we really understand that and we give up that need to know, we end up exactly where we need to be. And then the other part of not knowing is it's an open playing field to create the life that you want. If you believed you knew what was going to happen next, you wouldn't live life to the fullest. You wouldn't put your all in every day. You might feel defeated. You might feel like, well, I can never change this. And everything is going to be about an outcome and not about the journey, not about the experience. We might not like the outcome of what happens in 5 years, but all the experiences, all the excitement, all those moments of hope and trying things, that's the juice of life. So just because you know the outcome doesn't mean the outcome was the best part of your life. And the other piece is that when we don't know, we could fill our life with hope. Because again, it's an open playing field of unlimited possibilities. I always say uncertainty is your best friend, because if you want your life to change, it has to happen in the unknown. And when you have trouble finding that, you have the maybe practice. You know your fears are not absolute. They can't be, because you don't know what's going to happen next. And when you recognize that, you see life has maybe. Maybe everything is okay the way it is. Maybe you'll figure it out when the time comes. Maybe it'll be okay no matter what. That's what maybe does. It allows you to know that the future is unknown, and because it's unknown, you have hope. And then it brings you back to the moment where you are your strongest. You have the most potential for joy. And you have, again, the most potential to live very deep, meaningful life. But when you're always worried about the future, when you always want to know, you are just giving up today. You are choosing certainty over possibility. If all of us could just give up our need to know the future and know that the unknowing is such a hopeful place. It means that there can be peace. It means that there can be joy. It means that your dreams could come true. If we could just settle into that, all our stress and our fear and our worry will settle. And with a settled mind, we come to the moment and we just breathe it in. And again, we just complete it. And we complete it with our presence and our best selves. And that's the best way to live. It's the most creative way to live, the most joyous way to live. And in the moment when you are meant to deal with that future, you will be ready. I was ready to change the language on the audiobook, and I am ready for my audiobook to come out on Tuesday. And when I celebrate with my family and friends, it'll be a different group, but doesn't mean it still won't be okay. We forget that. We think that if things change, we won't be okay. If things change, we won't be able to handle it. But you don't know that. You don't know who you will be in that future. You don't know the resources that you will have. And just because there's potential for things to happen that you don't like, it doesn't mean you're not going to be okay. If I have learned anything in the past 9 years, is there are many ways to be okay. And do not give up this moment. Do not give up the joy in front of you. Do not give up the possibilities that are in front of you. Do not give up what life is giving you right now, because that is the gift. And no matter what anyone tells you, your future is filled with unlimited possibilities. And when the future comes, you will be ready. Again, I am so thrilled that the audiobook for The Gift of Maybe is coming out on Tuesday. I hope many of you have a chance to listen to it. I hope it brings you joy, and I hope it gives you strength to know that because the future is unknown, maybe the best is yet to come. Thank you for listening to this podcast today. If you'd like to get in touch with me, you could email me at allison@allisoncarmen.com. If you'd like to buy The Gift of Maybe or Year Without Men, they're available at all major bookstores and online retailers. And if you'd like to listen to the new audiobook for The Gift of Maybe, it's available on all major audio platforms. And if you like this podcast, I hope you subscribe and leave a comment.